AM 1380, The Biz, the Wall Street Business Network.
Are you one of the 9 million Floridians living in a community managed by a property manager or HOA? If you've ever wondered what your rights are as a resident or what your role is as a volunteer board member, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Condo Coaches, your resource for when your gated community starts to feel more like you're stuck behind bars, or when that guy next door decides that a hot pink Chevy on cinder blocks really sets the tone for the neighborhood. The Condo Coaches is brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. And now your host, Johnny Torres.
Hello, everybody. It's the Condo Coaches radio show coming to you live from whenever, wherever you may be listening or watching this show. Again, we do stream it live on our Facebook page at facebook.com/thecondocoaches. That's facebook.com/thecondocoaches. You can also find every previous episode we've done on YouTube. You just go to youtube.com and search for The Condo Coaches. And, of course, our website, thecondocoaches.com, where you're not only going to find our videos, but you're also going to find blog posts and all the information you need to get a hold of us. In addition to our playbooks, which we'll talk about in just a little while, but our playbooks, again, are absolutely free, and you can download those right now at thecondocoaches.com/playbook. For those of you listening for the first time, we are a team of volunteers sharing our expertise, our knowledge, our experience when it comes to running your community, neighborhood, or homeowner association. And we do that to help you run your community more effectively, efficiently, and on budget. And helping me do that every single week is head coach Dean Akers. How are you, sir?
Good, Johnny. How are you today?
Doing good. Nice weekend. Finally seeming like things are back to normal here in the Tampa Bay area, at least.
In the Tampa Bay area, they are, but we have Nathan on today. There's still a lot of confusion, a lot of stuff going on with this hurricane, and a lot of people really still displaced and wondering what to do.
Well, and I think you're exactly right. It's a matter now of really putting the pieces back together, and I know that there's still people having power issues. There's still people that are now beginning the process on insurance claims and that sort of thing. And in driving around, I realize, it seems to me anyways, that really Pinellas got a lot more damage than Hillsborough did.
Yeah.
And not to get too local because we are a statewide, syndicated radio show, but I was really surprised by that. Went out to the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. They seemed to fare really well. But in getting there and getting back and all that, it seemed to me like there was more damage out in Pinellas, maybe because they're surrounded by water, it being a peninsula and all, but it seemed like there was a little bit. Nathan, you are our guest for today. You're a public adjuster. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And from what you're hearing, you're also here in the Tampa Bay area. Are you kind of finding that? Do you see, or is it kind of even all across the board, at least in the Tampa Bay area, in terms of damage from Hurricane Irma?
Right. Tampa didn't have quite as much damage as St. Pete, like you're saying.
Yeah.
St. Pete's a much lower area, so flooding was much more severe down there. But I've been traveling a lot over the state, down south to Marco, Naples, Fort Myers, and down south it's devastational, really.
Well, we'll get into that, definitely, because, we haven't really had the chance to get down there, but I know that there are pockets of the state that truly are devastated. I mean, we're also seeing what's happened down in Puerto Rico, and there are parts, I know, of Southwest Florida that were equally devastated in terms of not only people's personal property, but also infrastructure and the like, so we'll definitely be touching on that.
We've gotten a bunch of our coaches across the state have been calling in to me over the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And we're helping associations down in Southeast Florida. And, we're sitting here in Tampa Bay, both you and I, and we kind of look around. It wasn't that bad, but it's still pretty bad, even in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. And the condominium associations down there are just confused, and they're looking for good information. And we've had a couple of guests, and having Nathan today is, he's probably the most neutral guest we've had on what you need to be doing. Right. And so there's a lot of stuff still going on.
All right. Well, one of the things that we do every episode is we tap into our social media profiles. We also go into our email inbox. We answer questions regarding issues you may be having either with your board or your board, the issues that your board may be facing. So today, it's been kind of light, I guess in the past couple of weeks, again, because of the hurricane. People got a lot going on and everyone's trying to get back to normal. But Dean, I know you've talked to somebody recently that I think can help some other people out there.
Yeah, we had one of the listeners reach out, and she was really interested. She felt like communication wasn't going well with her board. She wanted to be able to call her own board meeting or her own annual meeting.
Right.
And the answer is, she said, can I do that? And the answer is no. She needs to talk to an attorney, but from a condo coach, no. The board is responsible for calling their board meetings as they deem necessary. There's no requirement to have them every month or whatever,
unless it's in their governing documents.
Yeah, but usually they don't have it. They don't have a board meeting. They have the annual meeting, which is required every year.
Yeah.
What I suggested to her is there's no reason, if there's a big consensus in the community, for her not to organize a community meeting,
right,
and invite the board.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly right. Sometimes, leadership, doesn't mean that you need a title. It could be just, taking the bull by the horns and getting the result that you're looking for. And we've heard this from actually a couple other communities where they're frustrated with their board, and so they are getting together as neighbors to then address the board with their concerns and the issues that they're seeing in the community.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, at lunch we were talking about it in a different direction because he works with boards also. And we were talking about how these boards, they're just all so different and they're all small businesses. So It's a real struggle.
Well, and again, there's no reason why the neighbors can't get together on their own and be proactive about it. Invite board members there to show up, say, hey, we're going to talk about the issues that we're seeing in the community. You're more than welcome to join us and hear us out, or you're definitely going to get an earful at the next board meeting.
Yeah.
So there's a proactive way to approach it.
Well, we had the one person that about 2 months ago where she was actively involved. I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but they had their attorney write a restraining thing restricting her from board meeting. And obviously she wasn't a happy camper.
Yeah.
And I talked to her and, she wasn't doing anything wrong. She's just an activist in the community and they were trying to shun her out. And all that did was just like take gasoline and pour it on a fire. It's just, there's no upside.
Well, again, kind of like, what we're seeing, right now with the whole professional football situation, and not to get into that whole mess, but, the truth of the matter is that, maybe we should have just left that situation alone. Really didn't need any more gas on that fire. And sure enough, I mean, it's now, we're going to be hearing about this for the next few months.
And not to, like you say, not to go political, but there was no upside. Everybody's upset now, and they've lost the focus of what their real deal was.
Right. Well, and then now it becomes, okay, well, what's the outcome going to look like, right? And how do you fix it? And so how do you come back from that? And so in kind of tying it back to, again, board members and residents and neighbors, we got to remember at the end of the day, you all still have to live together. You all still are in the same neighborhood. Or you can do like one guy did in my neighborhood, which he built this thing that nobody really wanted, and then he, skipped town, sold his place, and left. So,
but for boards, diplomacy, transparency, it's just, I don't even know why it's such a difficult thing, but if somebody will just become transparent, people's fears are almost alleviated. I used to do it when I had companies. I made my financial statements available to all employees. In some companies, I had 800 employees.
Sure.
And so everybody goes, well, they'll know all this stuff going on. I go, who cares?
Right. Well, and so, we definitely want to hear from more people in regards to the issues, your concerns, the things that you're dealing with in your community. Because again, while you may think that this is only happening in your community, it couldn't be farther from the truth. This is happening in every single association, every board across the country. It's some shade of these kind of problems. And so we want you to shoot those over to us. There's a few ways you can get a hold of us. One of them is through our website, again, thecondocoaches.com. thecondocoaches.com is our website. That's a very easy way. There's a few forms on there you can fill out. Also, you can email us. An email is a great way because it helps get that conversation started. And what we do with that email is that we then pass that on to the condo coach that is best suited to help you fix that problem. So if you want to email us, the email address is help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com, because that's what we love to do around here. And then last but not least is our phone number. Dean loves getting calls, usually about 12:30 in the morning. So if you want to give us a call any time of the day, 24/7, you leave us a message. And then what we do is make sure that, again, the best suited coach to help you with that issue gets back to you. Our phone number, 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415, and that number is good anywhere. So feel free to reach out to us because we definitely want to hear from you in regards to the issues and the trends that you see happening in your neighborhood.
I probably need to get this to you so we can get it posted, but I just woke up the other day because of all the craziness with the hurricanes and everything.
Yep.
And I looked at my calendar. We start in October, and we go to December at trade shows all over the state of Florida.
That's right.
We'll have your condo coaches at the trade shows, so look for more information on that.
Perfect.
We just ordered thousands more books, and so we're going to be all ready.
Well, we have our new book coming up,
right?
And that's going to be really book 7.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got 6 of them now, and not to kind of, because it ends up being like a long rant, but just to give you an idea, our playbooks right now are incredibly valuable. You download them absolutely free at thecondocoaches.com/playbook. That's thecondocoaches.com/playbook. And this one being our first book, really, is incredible because there's just so much value in here. The top 10 most important things you need to know if you're an HOA or a COA board member. This really has laid the foundation for all the books that have come after. But whether you're a resident or a board member, this is a great read, gives you a perspective as to, again, what a healthy, functioning community association or neighborhood association can be like. Also, the ABCs of holding elections. We're about to come up on that time of year again, so make sure you brush up on how to hold proper elections, and hopefully they'll be drama and stress-free, but that is often far from the case, so make sure you brush up on the basics of the elections. Collecting Delinquent Association Fees, another great booklet, and again, there are 7 of these now. 6 of them you can download right now at thecondocoaches.com. Segment 2 coming up right after this.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzz driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You could kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says, "I'm a catch," more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Don't forget, you can also download the Condo Coaches podcast, available on any major podcasting platform, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, etc., etc. Great way to get the Condo Coaches information that you are looking for on your daily commute. It's an easy listen. Again, it boils down to about a 50-minute show, and it goes right to your phone or right to your music audio device when the new episode comes out every single week. And every episode is out there. So if you go to iTunes and you search for the Condo Coaches, you can also go back and listen to every single episode that we've done. And you don't have to look at our mugs, on the YouTube channel or on Facebook. But thank you again for tuning in. And for those of you listening listening. We're the Condo Coaches, again, a team of volunteers here sharing our expertise to help your community or neighborhood association run effectively, efficiently, and on budget. Head coach Dean Akers with me, and our guest coach, Nathan Sheppard, public adjuster. Thank you so much for joining us. We know that, especially, now that we're only a few weeks out from Hurricane Irma, you must be incredibly busy. But let's start at square one. What is a public adjuster?
Great question. That's, I'm asked that question all the time. A lot of times when people ask me, they say, oh, yeah, I know what an insurance adjuster is, and they think that's what I do. But there's three types of adjusters. There's an insurance adjuster, an independent adjuster, and then, of course, a public adjuster. The first two are either employees of the insurance company or independent contractors hired by the insurance company to represent the insurance company. They have a legal and fiduciary responsibility to the insurance company, unfortunately not to you. That brings the public adjuster into play, which is licensed by the state of Florida to represent policyholders. We have a legal and fiduciary responsibility to only you and not the insurance company.
That's awesome. And that fiduciary responsibility is legal?
It's legal.
Right. So again, and if you've ever dealt with financial advisors, again, there's a lot of kind of gray area as to what some of those roles are and what they can and can't do. So it's good to know for people that are out there maybe looking, again, for someone that's going to look out for you, kind of have your back in these kind of situations, especially with the amount of stress that comes with having to deal with your property and your home in a post-disaster type of situation. You want all the support you can get. And you said you've been traveling up and down the coast of Florida. Yep. We, of course, originate the show from Tampa Bay, but we broadcast all across the state. What is typically some of the misinformation or maybe some of the missteps that are made immediately following a storm like Hurricane Irma that people need to be aware of, that maybe they've already committed or maybe they're thinking about moving forward in this process?
Great question. Documentation, taking pictures of the damage before you remove it and start the mitigation process, really reading your policy, not just the declarations page, but the 50, 60 pages of stuff behind the declarations page. So you really know what's covered, what's not covered, and documenting the damage so that you can prepare, a claims package with the estimates and things that are necessary to hopefully indemnify you and bring you back to your pre-condition loss.
Well, and despite, the Condo Coaches name, I mean, the information we put out is whether you live in a single family home, condominium, townhome, every once in a while we even touch on some co-op stuff, but, really that applies regardless of your living situation, regardless of the state of your property. We've been harping on that now for the past 3 shows, is the importance of documentation. What is it that someone like yourself looks for when you immediately arrive on the property?
Right. Well, the first thing, of course, I do is review the insurance policy to make sure that all the coverages there are necessary. And then, go through the dialogue with the insured about what happened. Did they take pictures before? Did they have pictures from afterwards? And then really assess the situation before my involvement takes place. One of the things that I'm seeing most frequently now is the lack of coverage that people have. If we're speaking about condo associations or homeowner associations, the amount of trees that went down after the storm was just incredible. And a lot of policies, almost all, have very limited coverage for debris removal, for tree removal. So when these associations are getting these arborists, which are required to climb those trees and remove the trees, when they're getting these bills, it's a bad situation. They're having hundreds of thousands of dollars in tree and debris removal, and they may get 20% reimbursement for those bills.
So in that situation, again, what's the proper process? Because people, their first instinct is just get it off my yard, get it off my house, get it out of my sight, basically. And so do they want to document that as well? And, when it comes to the trees and that sort of thing on the exterior?
Yes. If possible, you want to really take pictures of everything and document it. And when the arborists come out, to create maybe a diagram of where those trees were, so that you can associate the expense that's associated with the removal of that tree.
Okay. Because really, in that situation, it's not just the damage that it caused or may not have caused, but also the fact that it's on your property, right, and it's costing you money to get that removed. I'm sure, would you say it's pretty common that homeowners feel that that is a financial obligation on their part to have that tree removed and and everything that comes with it?
It is, and it's going to create a hardship for many people. A lot of people are going to have to refinance their home or take a home equity line out to get the money. You know, I've got clients that had one tree, and the one tree removal was $8,500.
Wow.
And that's before you even get into the damage to the roof or the ensuing damage from the interiors.
And I was going to ask you, really, what is that based on, right? So if I go and I hire an arborist, a landscaper, whoever it is to come and remove that tree, because there is so much of that, even for the areas that had little or no damage, how is that, in other words, for the person that doesn't know, right, how do they know if they're getting priced appropriately for that type of service?
You know, that's a great question. That's not my field
Sure.
in terms of being an arborist. But, you know, you'd go out there and, of course, want to get a few estimates, but it's supply and demand. And the amount of people that are affected by this storm is just tremendous. And there's not enough public adjusters, not enough insurance adjusters. There's not enough contractors or remediation companies. So it's, you know, unfortunately, the prices are going to go up, and it's going to be supply and demand.
And so getting to that, you know, because again, you joining us today, our public adjuster coach for this episode, it's a service that people, again, are very unfamiliar with. Mm-hmm. And so what is the process to have someone like yourself come into the fold to help them through this insurance claim process?
Sure. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd like them to have visible damage and not hidden damage, because it's a little easier to tell a story when you can see it and you can watch the story unfold. But, you know that there's damage there, visible damage. You know, you can call me. I'd be happy to review your insurance policy and depending on the types of damage that you have, and just go from there. You know, we offer a service. We work on a contingency fee, so it doesn't cost you anything to call us, and we'd be happy to help you.
So when, again, you know, talking immediate steps following that, you talked about documentation. And we actually had Scott Wilcox, who's our kind of a disaster coach, really. Mm-hmm. He was on with us recently, and he talks about immediately removing the things in your home mm-hmm. that could cause mold and water retention and that sort of thing. What are maybe some steps that you would recommend before they go start pulling out carpet and cutting out drywall and that sort of thing? Other than documentation, right? Because you want to take pictures before and then immediately after. What are some other things they can do in that situation to make sure that they're not going to jeopardize their insurance claim?
Again, it goes back to documentation. You're going to you have duties after a loss to notify the insurance company, take pictures, keep receipts, get estimates, record inventory. Those things are all required to you under the policy.
Yeah. And is there something that you know, again, going back to what are some of the mistakes that you see made? You know, the tree example is a great one. I think, again, I didn't know that would be something that could be potentially covered under your homeowner's insurance. What are maybe one of the other things that people need to be aware of, you know, going into filing an insurance claim and making sure that they're taking full advantage of the insurance they've purchased?
Oh, they need to get somebody that's on their side, somebody that's going to have their best interest. And that's going to be, in my opinion, of course, I'm biased, but a public adjuster, because we're going to do all the documentation. We're going to do all of the reviewing of the policies. We're going to make sure that you followed all of your post-loss obligations and to prepare all the estimates that are necessary to really give you a fair shot at indemnifying yourself and bringing you back to your precondition loss.
All right. Well, we're going to keep talking a little bit about that process. And again, for those of you listening, if you want more information on working with a public adjuster, we are also, again, wanting to reiterate some of the other services that as the Condo Coaches that we provide. You know, we do the financial assessment. We can even do a post-disaster assessment. You know, Scott talked about coming out and doing a survey of a community or a property. So if you want any of those services, reach out to us here at the Condo Coaches. That's help@thecondocoaches.com, our email address, help@thecondocoaches.com, or you can also call us 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. In the next segment, again, we're going to kind of go through what the process is like, what people can expect going forward, right? Because I would say most people are still at the beginning stages mm-hmm. of their insurance claim, right?
If that's assuming that the adjusters have even gotten to their home. Yeah. You know, I'm seeing 2 weeks sometimes before the insurance adjusters get to the property. Okay. And there's a lot of questions that people have. Why is it taking so long? You know, is this going to be covered?
Yeah.
So it's.
All right, well, we'll tackle some of that in the next segment. Again, joining us is Nathan Sheppard, our public adjuster coach for this episode, head coach, Dean Akers. And again, don't forget to go to our website where you can download our free booklets. We were talking about delinquent association fees, the ABCs of holding elections, the top 10 things you need to know if you're a board member, and of course, understanding your community's finances. These free downloads available right now at thecondocoaches.com/playbook, thecondocoaches.com/playbook. Segment 3 coming up next.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to. Nope. I'm sure you've got a perfectly good excuse. Kids, work. I get it. You're busy. So what better time than now? Let's begin. Raise one finger if you're a man. Ladies, none yet. Oh, count in your head if you're driving. Now, 3 more fingers for everyone over 60, 2 over 50, 1 over 40, 1 more if you're not physically active, another finger if anyone in your family has type 2 diabetes. Another if you've got high blood pressure. If you're overweight, raise another finger. 2 if you're very overweight. And 3 if you're really overweight. You've just taken the world's first audio prediabetes test. And if you're holding up 5 or more fingers, visit doihaveprediabetes.org or talk to your doctor. There's no excuse because prediabetes can be reversed.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you again for listening, watching, whenever, wherever you may be doing so. Every episode available online, thecondocoaches.com, or at our Facebook page, facebook.com/thecondocoaches, or one of our favorites, YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, search The Condo Coaches. Every episode up there available for you to watch. Joining us today, Nathan Sheppard, our public adjuster coach, head coach, Dean Akers, and we are talking about what exactly a public adjuster does and how that fits into a post-disaster situation like we just had with Hurricane Irma. Many of you out there are still dealing with not only infrastructure issues, but again, now picking up the pieces and getting your life back to normal. Here in the Tampa Bay area, we still are having issues where rivers are flooding. And there's so it's kind of the aftermath even still where there's people whose homes are still underwater even 3 weeks later.
When Nathan and I met for lunch, as we do before the shows, he brought up something that was really interesting to me that I had no clue on. Is there's really only 2 groups of people that can represent the homeowners for their insurance.
Okay.
To with an insurance company. And he was sharing with me who they were, the public adjusters and lawyers. And he was telling me that you need to be aware of contractors representing today, because that's not their job.
Sure, and it could jeopardize your insurance claim.
Correct.
Yes, it's called UPPA, which is the unlawful practice of public adjusting, and it's actually a 3rd-degree felony.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah. Well, and again, that could completely shoot your insurance claim.
Yeah, so you want to, I thought, spending time with him, I mean, he's a wealth of knowledge. I learned a lot about public adjustment, which he's talking with you on now, and I didn't realize how important this segment is to protecting the interest of our condominium owners.
Yeah. And so one of the things you touched on, and I wanted to go back to in the first segment, I think it might have even been, where you mentioned the lack of knowledge or that self-education that needs to take place in terms of what kind of insurance you have.
Right.
And so, we had the example with the tree, right? And tree removal and that sort of thing. Let's kind of first talk about fluff, right? What are some of the things that people typically get that maybe they don't need, especially that we're seeing that, is typically just kind of piled on top of an actual decent insurance policy?
Well, I wouldn't say fluff. Okay. I would say 9 out of 10 times there's not enough coverage.
Okay.
Or the policy doesn't cover specific things that would be the more common types of loss that you would have, such as backup and overflow of a toilet. I mean, we all have kids and sometimes they stick stuff in the toilet and then the toilet overflows and lo and behold, you don't have coverage for backup and overflow. Your policy says you have water damage coverage, but you don't have backup and overflow. Typically that's an additional endorsement that you have to purchase.
So what is the difference there? How does that, because obviously the backup and overflow causes the water damage, and so does one cancel out the other if you don't have that backup and overflow protection?
Yes.
Okay. So like you said, if my kid shoves something down the toilet overflows, then therefore my water damage isn't covered.
Every policy is different, but you just have to, again, it's reading the policy and really understanding it. And, going back to what you'd said, when you're buying an insurance policy, is really discussing the most common things that may occur in your home with your agent, so they can go through the back of the policy and say, okay, if you have backup and overflow, this is covered. A lot of times there's language in the policy that says that you have 14 days from the date you became aware of something in your property, or you should have become aware of it. So where that problem lies is, what if you have a burst pipe in the wall that's got a slow leak?
Yeah.
The burden of proof is shifted to you, the insured, to prove that it's not been going on for more than 14 days. It's next to impossible to prove.
Well, we heard that from Scott Wilcox, who said that people who were filling their tubs up with water, as a preparation measure for Hurricane Irma, were then finding out days later that they did have a small leak in their plumbing system because it was draining either to a floor beneath them, or it was causing water damage in their home. But like you said, I mean, it could have been days, since that started. And especially if you were kind of dealing with this maybe just before Irma, well, now you've been dealing with tons of other stuff since, and maybe haven't done your diligence in filing that claim and making the insurance company aware.
Are there a couple of things that are, with your experience, that are not known to be covered, like the trees? Is there like 5 top things that you find that people go, well, what do you mean that wasn't covered?
They're removing more and more coverages, I feel like, every year. And again, every policy is different, but the 14-day exclusionary language that's in the policy, I think, is very important. The backup and overflow, because that's very, very common.
And what needs to happen in that 14-day window? Sorry.
Well, that's the dilemma, is if you have a slow leak that's in a pipe in the wall, the date you notice it is really the date of loss, but it very well could have been trickling out of that pipe, and you didn't notice it until it manifested on a stain on the drywall. And when the insurance companies can and do,
so you need to notify them within those 14 days. But
correct.
But that really, essentially, what they're trying to do is then make the case that maybe this was a much longer, ongoing problem, and therefore you were probably out of that window a long time before then.
Correct.
That doesn't sound like that would, if they that's why you need a public adjuster or an attorney, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
And so, basically, continuing to expand on Dean's question, I mean, what is maybe part of a policy that people either A, typically don't pay for, that they should, or maybe that most policies don't have, that's something that they need to be asking for?
Again, backup and overflow. You have to buy endorsements to give you the most coverage. And when you buy a cheap policy, you're going to get cheap coverages.
Sure.
So I wouldn't base it on price. I'd base it on the coverages that would be the most commonly used. So it's just read the policy, understand the policy, and buy a good policy.
Well, especially, right after a situation like Hurricane Irma, where now okay, well, maybe I do need to have in my policy that tree and debris removal be included in that, or again, maybe that backup and overflow versus just water damage, because I'm sure people looked at and depending on their agent, they maybe said, oh, well, if I have water damage, then that would cover backup
Correct.
and overflow, when again, there maybe they weren't educated to know that one really cancels out the other.
Yeah, I would say maybe you could even shoot back to us sometime the top 3 things that somebody needs to check on their policy.
Sure. Yep.
that they have coverage, because I'm sure the average board member, they have an insurance person that comes in and quotes it, and they're saying we got to get the price right, and they go, oh, we got your insurance coverage for $50,000 or whatever, but they're missing tree removal or they're missing something else, and it only comes out in the disaster, and everybody goes, well, how did we not have that?
Right. And then, what recourse do you have if you don't like the settlement that the insurance company gives you? And, all policies will have typically a mediation clause in there, but the mediation's not binding. There's another provision in the policy that not every policy has, which is an appraisal provision, which is if the insured and the insurance company disagree on a dollar amount more than $500, that you can go back and ask for more money, where each party selects a competent appraiser, and it becomes legally binding if two parties can agree, if the appraiser and the umpire, or the appraiser and the insured.
Yeah, so don't think that just because the settlement is come and gone that's really end of the ball game.
Correct.
Yeah, and and so let's kind of again go back to one of the things that you mentioned, because we've talked about obviously the need for documentation and the need to educate yourself on not only your insurance policy but also your homeowners association policy and exactly what that covers and what that doesn't cover. But the one thing that we're hearing, because again we had not only an insurance attorney on, but we also had a disaster recovery specialist on, and you're seeing it as well, is the lack of availability for people who provide these services.
Correct.
Obviously for most people it was power, right? Everybody was anxious to get their power back on. I think for the most part, I think most people got it back within a reasonable amount of time, considering the crazy amount of things that need to work for an electrical grid to function properly. But how deep in the weeds do you see yourself and other people that are in your industry right now in terms of being able to go out and take someone's calls and come to their property and do the assessments?
I don't know how deep in the weeds it is. I know that the carriers are really struggling with staff, and we haven't had a storm for a long time. They're flying people in from Texas and from Illinois and all over the place to come in and try to adjust these losses, because they have an obligation to the insured to treat the insured fairly and to be at their property in a reasonable time. And with the lack of resources, I saw that Citizens is recently hiring an additional 2,500 insurance adjusters to come and adjust these losses, because they insure a lot of the properties along the coastal areas that are difficult to get insurance.
Yeah. Well, and they were slowly trying to, kind of walk out the back door, and now they're just, like back The Godfather, they get pulled right back in. And what is a reasonable amount of time? I mean, we're talking about, especially with an insurance policy, which is a legally binding agreement, there are some time windows that need to be met. So what typically is reasonable, so people have a realistic expectation of when they should have someone there at their property?
I mean, I think reasonable is immediate, but the insurance company typically says 24 to 72 hours to make contact with the insured after filing a loss. They have 14 days from receiving communications to respond. And, I'm seeing total losses, and it's being 14 days without any communication.
And what kind of a position does that put you in with your insurance company?
Sense of urgency,
Yeah.
They really.
But could it jeopardize your insurance claim? In other words, because they're trying to get a public adjuster, to come out, take a look at, do an assessment of their property. I mean, is there a chance that might jeopardize their insurance claim, or are they good because they've already filed an insurance claim?
Well, the most important part is filing the insurance claim. We're going to be there as soon as possible, and typically as soon as they call us. From the insurance adjuster standpoint, I'm not the insurance company, so they're going to get there when they have the boots on the ground and can get there. And I don't know when what they feel is acceptable or not.
Yeah, because again, if you go and you talk to someone and that person says, yeah, okay, I'll be there in a few days, and then a few days becomes a week, and so at what point, I guess, should someone say, oh, well, maybe I need to bring in somebody else to do this?
I would say immediately.
Yeah. Okay, good. No, and that's fine, I mean, but it's about, again, this is uncharted territory for a lot of people, especially on the west coast of Florida, where they hadn't been hit directly by a hurricane in a long time. So we're going to keep talking about, again, post-disaster recovery with public adjuster Nathan Sheppard. It's the Condo Coaches radio show, anywhere, everywhere, online at thecondocoaches.com. We'll be back for our final segment.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
With everything you've done to lift up those around you during your military career, we're not going to let your money concerns get you down. We're the NFCC, and we've got your back on this one. As your financial advocate, we're dedicated to improving the financial health of all members of the military community. Whether your debt issues are related to student loans or housing or involve credit cards, our goal is to help you to defend your financial future. NFCC certified credit counselors have already made the difference for thousands of military members and their families. Let us make a difference for you and yours. Schedule a confidential financial review with an objective nonprofit NFCC financial counselor. Call us today at 877-404-6322. That's 877-404-6322. Or visit us at nfcc.org/military. You owe it to yourself. Get relief now.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you again for listening. For those of you listening for the first time, the Condo Coaches are a team of volunteers helping you run your community, neighborhood, homeowner association effectively, efficiently, and on budget. We bring in experts, and of course, we're still on the topic of post-disaster recovery following Hurricane Irma. Joining us today, public adjuster Nathan Sheppard, head coach Dean Akers, and we chit-chat a little bit, in between segments here, and a great point was made by Dean, which is the amount of stress that comes following an event like this. Even for some people who may have had minor damage, it really kind of throws your whole life into a flux. We're, of course, seeing stories now of people who financially were hit hard because either their home displaced them and or where they work, either had to close business or they're still recovering from the disaster. They weren't able to reopen, and now their source of income is dried up. So there's any number of factors and stressors that come after a post disaster like this. How important is it to, you said it, you've done a great job of reiterating how important documentation is. And we talked about this with Christy, our insurance coach, when she was here. When you are dealing with the insurance company, maybe an attorney, maybe a public adjuster, stress to us the importance of documenting even all of those conversations in that whole process.
Sure. It's hard to hold people accountable over a telephone conversation because typically the homeowner or the business is not recording the conversation, but the insurance companies are. It's usually one of those disclaimers that they always say, when you call in, we're recording this conversation. But the typical insured's not recording the conversation. They assume that the insurance company has their best interest in mind, so they just trust that they're going to do what's right. Especially now, because of the lack of resources with the insurance adjusters and public adjusters and restoration companies, it's ever more important to document. And one of the ways you can do that is when you have a telephone conversation with the insurance company, to memorialize it in an email and shoot it back to them so that you have a record and you have a flow and a thread of those communications.
So take notes about everything discussed,
everything.
And then make sure that you follow up with them and saying, hey, this is everything we discussed. Is everything accurate? Are we sticking to these timelines? And get their confirmation in writing.
Right. And the timeline's a key point. Put it back on them, the insurance company. Say, will you get back to me in 7 days or 14 days or whatever that may be? And then kind of hold them accountable that they need to respond within that time frame and do so in form of an email.
Well, and a big part of the reason why we wanted to have you on today is because what we do here is we provide an unbiased opinion as to the situations, the challenges, the struggles that associations are going through. We don't take sides with any board. We don't take sides with the residents. I mean, we kind of present it as is and really try to not take any sides really in any of those situations that we present. And so really that's the whole need, right, for a public adjuster is to come in, give an unbiased opinion as to the status of someone's home or the damage on someone's home. And oftentimes I would think, is it mostly because there's some dispute over the value, be it of property or be it the home itself?
Yes. Typically, what dictates price is scope. So if you limit the scope of work, you're going to limit what ultimately is paid. And that's what I see as the biggest difference. Because if we're all using the same estimating programs and, to put a roof back on or to put a wall up is the same price, then how is it that we get 700% more for the insured or 500% more? It's because of the scope of work. The insurance companies have way more money than we do, and they've got the lobbyists and millions of dollars to do the lobbying.
Sure.
So they're not paying $50,000 more, $100,000, $1 million more just because I write an estimate. They're writing it for that much more because of the scope of work that we provided and being able to substantiate why they're owed what they're owed.
And so let's talk about that. I mean, really, so again, you are the unbiased opinion there. You know, your fiduciary responsibility is to the person who brings you on, be it the homeowner or maybe an attorney working on behalf of that homeowner. Is that accurate?
I don't understand the question.
So no, I'm just reiterating again your role as the public adjuster for those who maybe tuned in halfway. Typically, the person who brings you in is either the homeowner or an attorney working on behalf of the homeowner.
Yeah, the attorney would bring me on more of as a consulting role, to be the eyes and ears and the boots on the ground. But typically, we're able to get the job done without having to go the legal route, and that's one of the benefits of hiring a public adjuster is not to have to go to lawsuit.
So it really helps in the mediation process.
Right.
And where do you see the most discrepancy in terms of value assessed when we're talking about, is it electronics? Is it vehicles? Is it just the home in general? Where do you see the most of the kind of, I don't want to say fighting, but really most of the negotiating take place in regards to the value of someone's property or home?
Well, as we just had a major hurricane, so the biggest discrepancy is probably going to be the roofing systems, matching statutes. You've got a condominium association with 50 buildings and, you replace 3 of the buildings. Well, there's uniformity standards that will be in the condo docs that says, no, you have to maintain a uniform appearance. So you got to replace all the roofs. Or if you want to, put a Band-Aid on one roof in particular with a bunch of mismatched tiles, it's going to look like a checkerboard.
Sure.
And does that decrease the value of that home? And, we're going to argue based on matching statutes on Florida building code on why that roof needs to be replaced entirely, assuming the damage is there from the storm.
And really your goal is to get that property restored to the value it had.
To its precondition loss with light, color, kind, and quality. Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. And so again, when people are looking to bring somebody on like yourselves, there's public adjusters out there, of course, many of them overwhelmed right now. But what are some of the questions they should be asking someone like yourself before they bring them into the fold?
Yeah. How can you help me? What value do you bring? How are you going to get us to where we ultimately want to be? And that's, putting us back to our precondition loss. People, buy from people they like, know, and trust. And, in my business, you're not buying anything, but you're trusting me to help you. And, I want to work with people that believe that I can help them.
Yeah. And where are some of the things that you would say differentiate some adjusters from others?
Work ethic, documentation. A lot of people just like to go in there, prepare an estimate and hope the insurance company pays. And if they don't, they just either, give up or they just flip it over to an attorney and don't really fight for the insured. So that's the importance of documenting the file, really making sure that the insurance company is accountable for their actions, preparing proper estimates that are solid, that really you can't really argue, with no fluff, bringing in the engineers necessary to substantiate it if need be, and just, understanding the business.
Yeah. And so again, really your role, not primarily, but really the end goal is to avoid any type of lawsuits needing to take place and that sort of thing. Really, your goal is mediation.
Come into a fair settlement with the insurance company.
Sure. And how complicated is it? I mean, is it really like when once you got a public adjuster on board, would you say that process becomes a lot smoother for someone that's dealing with an insurance company? And
well, we take a lot of the stresses off the insured so that they don't have to do all these things. They don't have to make all the telephone calls. They don't have to do all the emails. They don't have to worry about hiring an engineer or the contractors to prepare estimates. So we really take that stress off the individual. As it pertains to condo associations and to homeowner associations, you've got condo docs, you've got minutes, you've got all these things that the insurance company is going to require, and that's time consuming. So, wouldn't it be helpful to have somebody like a public adjuster to help them and to hold their hand and to go through all of those steps?
Yeah, well, and one of the things we've also talked about is the fact that Of course, most people right now are focused on their homes, but especially if you live in a large community that has a number of amenities, is also the diligence that you are needing to have for those amenities as well, and making sure that they're in proper working order and up to standards and pre-disaster. And do you also factor in with that, or is it mostly with the individual residents or even the communities at large?
That's a good point. We've got golf courses, and you've got country clubs, and you've got business interruption, the whole business interruption component to commercial businesses. Employee wages that are lost. Was the golf course open? Was it closed? How long was it closed? Did they have food spoilage? There's a variety of different things that are involved with the business interruption, but that's kind of a whole nother.
So even for businesses, I mean, it's highly recommended that they bring on a public adjuster.
Absolutely.
And real quick, you mentioned golf courses. So if you have a business that's dependent, let's say, on landscaping, like golf courses often are, is that something also that should be or typically would be covered under an insurance policy?
It would be up to that particular policy. It would be dependent on that policy, yep.
All right, awesome. Well, if you do have any questions for our guest coach, Nathan Sheppard, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
This is our public adjuster coach for today's episode, head coach Dean Akers. You can always reach us, again, online at thecondocoaches.com. We've got a couple forms there where you can reach out to us or ask a question that we may address here on the show. You can also email us, help@thecondocoaches.com. That's help@thecondocoaches.com. Or, of course, call us. Send us a little message. Say hello. We'd love to hear from you. 813-331-5415. 813-331-5415. Say goodbye, Dean.
Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Condo Coaches, brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find us online at thecondocoaches.com and join us this same time next week as we help you navigate life in your managed community.